Welcome to Shardcast, the Brandon Sanderson podcast. We're a bunch of mega fans giving you the news, discussion, and of course, a whole lot of opinions about Brandon's works and the Cosmere. I'm Eric, and joining me is Alyx.
Hello, I'm Feather Rider.
Also joining us is Ian.
Hello, I am Weiry Rider, and I have show and tell today.
Okay.
So, we are all familiar with
Yes.
the little hardcover for
Oh,
Edge
you got yours?
You got yours.
Ah,
Yeah,
you punk.
damn.
Very, very similar. It is not exactly the same dimensionally. It's like
Wait, is it not the same dimensionally?
it's slightly taller, and it's like
Oh, why
Shorter
is it
on the side.
taller? No.
That's a little
like,
annoying.
it's like the height isn't as noticeable as like it is like
Well, can you like show us the
Yeah.
spine?
like
Why
front
is
to
it-
back. It's shorter.
Well, I know Mark.
spine-
Mark is gonna be annoyed.
Spine height, yeah, Jess is going to be annoyed for sure about that. But yeah, we don't have ours yet.
But like
Yeah.
overall, and it's like Edge Dancer has the like curved pages.
All
Dawn
I care
Shard.
about is spine height, to be honest. That's the only thing I actually care about.
Way of Kings, which I
Oh.
will prime, which I will maybe read at some point.
We'll read
It's
about all
Oh,
the
yeah.
Crom.
How does the cover feel? Does it feel like leathery? Not
It's like
leathery.
fabricy.
Okay, yeah, fabricy.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause that's what it looked like.
Yeah, so they've been sending out those Kickstarter things. I have no idea when this episode's coming out. Maybe May or something. It's early April when we're recording this. So, yeah.
Maybe now that I have it this physically, I will actually read it. But I'll say like this spine height is off maybe a millimeter or two. So
You shouldn't have pointed it
I
out.
know.
Eric might
Well,
not have
we
noticed,
would
and
have
now
noticed.
he's
We
gonna
would have
know.
noticed. We would have
Yeah.
noticed. Are the coins coming out soon? They haven't.
I saw an
I don't think
update
they
that they
have started
started
shipping.
getting them in.
Still waiting on cards
Yeah.
as of
Oh,
like,
right.
the end
Yeah.
of March.
Cool.
yeah, those will be all part of the swag batch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the coins are pretty much done. So
Cool. Also joining us is Evgeni. Hey, what's up?
hi, what up? They call me Argent in some places, and they call me other things in other places, and they call me really mean things in some other places. I don't know why that is.
What?
What?
Yeah, like there was this one time I was in this one place, and then this one person was like, "Hey, asshole!" I'm like, "That's not my name."
Hey, this is not show and tell. Now you're just padding time. Legit.
Okay, fine. Show and tell. The thing I was originally gonna show and tell is this. I'm still riding the Horizon Zero Dawn excitement wave.
Ooh.
It's a lovely
Art book?
comic.
Oh, comic. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
See if the library has that one.
It looks gorgeous, and it's also cheap. And I've also spent like a couple of $100 on Horizon Zero Dawn merch.
Oh boy.
The other thing that I actually had to go downstairs to grab was this Australian whiskey that I got called Starward.
Did you tell Jess about that? I think she
Yes.
recognized that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I got it
she would
because
know.
Lady Lemnis. Jess.
She recognized or did she recommend it to you?
I don't know if she recommended it,
Okay.
but she brought it up as a hey, that's a thing, and it has a star because star sight and word like Skyward.
Oh yeah. I remember this. Yeah.
And so I found it at a local place, and I bought it. And it's actually pretty nice bourbon. Is it? No, it's not bourbon. Bourbon has to be American. Pretty nice whiskey, aged in red wine barrels, and you can really like taste the red wine in that. It's kind of amazing.
Wow.
If you are allowed to drink, that is, you can taste it. If you not, then
Oh boy.
Great.
hi, I'm Argent.
Hi. Also we got Grace. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm Gator Girl. I don't have any exciting show and tell.
Okay,
So.
great.
Yeah.
Also we have Joshua. Hey, what's up?
Hey, I'm jofwu. Jeez, you guys are brainwashing me.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Uh-huh.
When are we going to do Infinity Blade cast?
We should
Because
do Infinity Blade cast.
So
right after
I
the
don't know.
Cremcast.
I recently realized that my library gives you like you're signing up for the library, you get a subscription to Hoopla, which is a site that has like audiobooks and multimedia stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think most libraries in the US, a lot of them at least, give you a subscription to Hoopla. But they had the Infinity Blade audiobook. They also had the White Sand graphic audio.
Wow.
Some other stuff that I've been listening to. So
Wow, that's a good supply.
yeah,
Cool.
White Sand graphic audio. By the way,
I didn't realize there was graphic audio for White Sand.
Yeah, they use
That's
some of the
wild.
prose to supplement.
it's got more stuff in it than it's in the graphic novel. I don't know. I think a lot of people, like, if they're turned off by the graphic novel, it's a good option to go do that.
Yeah.
They still have some funny errors.
Oh yeah.
My favorite was there's a scene that's like it's supposed to be like at night or whatever, like the time of day when people were mostly sleeping. They had some like owl music or some owl sound effects in the background. So
Love it.
typical White Sand fashion, but
I think one of the most notable things in the graphic audiobook is the fact that if you are familiar with their other Cosmere productions, you can instantly recognize the voice actor for Hoyd.
That's pretty funny.
Oh, Hoyd.
That's
Always
pretty funny.
popping for real.
And
though.
like he obviously like plays Hoyd, so like because in the graphic novel it's not super clear that this is Hoyd. It's kind of heavily implied, but it's not super clear. But when you listen to it, I'm like, oh, oh, this bard, this troubadour character, yeah.
Shockingly, the person the random bard who's singing is Hoyd. I know, very surprising.
Yeah.
I'm Chaos, and what we're going to do today is we're going to go through basically all the words of Brandon for the first quarter of this year. We got everything, even a little bit of April as well. And we're going to start by making content on the content you already listened to. Our Shardcast interview with Brandon, where you should go listen to that. But now we're going to analyze that. So, yeah, I'm sure it will be very exciting. What
we should have done was a video where we react to our interview with
that would've been
Brandon.
good.
Shardcast reacts to Shardcast.
Yeah. And then we do this,
and then,
which is
but
the analysis.
the review of the reaction?
Oh,
well,
boy.
That's the next thing we do.
Okay, yes.
Contentception.
Yeah.
And
That's
one
good.
of those instances where we send it to Brandon, so on a stream he could do like Brandon reacts to Shardcast reacting to Shardcast reacting to Brandon.
Oh,
Just
boy.
go 7 levels deep.
Excellent.
Really milk Brandon's face as a thumbnail.
Great. Yeah, well, we're going to talk about words of Brandon. And so I should probably actually go into the Bob mode, huh?
Yep.
All right. So a lot of these words of Brandon in this episode are like really long because Brandon likes to talk a lot. I don't know if you knew this, but he does like to talk. Which is great to listen to, and you should definitely listen to our episode. Link in the description. But yeah, we're going to paraphrase these because we have about double the amount of pages in our WOM document as normal, and I think some of our words of Brandon are literally just a full page in Google Docs of just Brandon talking.
Some are more.
Yeah. So we're going to do some paraphrasing. Have fun, Ben, who's editing this episode, fitting them on the screen. I don't know what that'll look like, but you'll find out. So, top of the list, if you were here during the part 1 preview chapters for Rhythm of War, where Brandon casually mentioned that they tossed the gemstone with a thrill into the ocean in the book, and there were some people on Reddit like, what? Why would they do that? And Brandon said, it's more secure than you'd think. And so top priority was to ask, what the crap does that mean? And so Brandon said that at Yasna's suggestion, which came through Hoyd, so it's Hoyd and Yasna approved, they locked it in an aluminum box and tossed it in the ocean. Yay!
Yeah.
But Brandon was saying that, like, the enemy could get to it. They could find it in Shadesmar pretty easily, and so aluminum's going to help with that. And tossing it in the ocean, it's going to be very difficult to find with Cosmere magics and stuff. And Brandon does say it's not a great solution. There just isn't really a good one.
I just want to point out that Naz was able to find Yasna's trunk at the bottom of the ocean, and that isn't an unmade. Which I would think it would be harder to find the box than an unmade. So, this is really not a good idea.
Well, I feel like they would have... I mean, we have a ship called the Wandersail, which apparently can go through high storms. So they could, throw it out, way off sea. Whereas, the Wind's Pleasure would have been, near the coast. Right?
They can also just fly to, the other side of the planet.
Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, we do have wind riders.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like the bottom of the ocean is more secure if we did this on, Scadrial or Nalthus, where people don't have powers that, literally give them control over pressure and things that usually prohibit you from getting to the bottom of the ocean.
That's a good point. That's a solid point. But at least the Fuse don't have the shard plate, Yeah.
I have opinions on all these things. Number one, I bet that Nas had a pretty good idea of where the shipwreck happened.
Yeah.
So he had a pretty close place to look, whereas this is presumably randomly out in the middle of the nowhere.
Yeah.
I do think that the ocean, I think it's more vulnerable probably on the Shadesmar side. It's searching all the bottoms of the oceans is difficult, but in Shadesmar it's on the land. So I would think that they would want to look for it there. Mm-hmm. Number three, their whole plan of doing this doesn't particularly bother me. I don't really have a better idea of where they would hide it. Most people want them to have hidden it somewhere where they not just randomly go lock it in a box in Erythru or something. To me, so part 2 of Rhythm of War, they've captured Erythru, so they would have found the thrill if it was in the tower.
Yeah.
Seems like it was a reasonable thing to do to me.
Yeah.
So, question. In Shadesmar, would it be on the surface or would it be down inside the stone?
It's a good question.
Good question.
Because the fish souls are inside
underneath
the stone.
Mm.
Yep.
Ooh,
That's
then you'd
what I
have
was
to
thinking as well.
actually go through the obsidian and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Minecraft Roshar edition.
Yeah.
I mean-
Literal, yeah, actually.
You don't really need to hide it somewhere they can't find. You just need to hide it somewhere inconvenient enough that they don't think it's worthwhile at the moment.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big stalling tactic, is what it is.
And just thinking about on a shardy level, at least Ruin and Preservation can't see metals, and I see no reason why other shards would be able to see metals either. I think that's still plausible. Maybe then you could see the metals shining if you were Odium, right? Maybe that's a problem.
Hold up. Let's put a hold on that thought.
Okay.
Because Rune and Preservation have a very unique relationship to metal.
Well, that's true, but metals have spiritual integrity and still matter elsewhere. So it's I don't even know what's real or not. You're right. You're totally right. We don't know how the other shards see metal, if they do or not, right?
And I'm trying to think. We obviously don't have a whole lot of POVs from shards, other than.
Oh, spoilers, by the way, guys. For Rhythm of War and other things. Mostly Rhythm of War for these. Just
Yeah.
And we don't really have anything from that brief moment when Taravangian ascends.
Yeah.
He doesn't note that metal is weird to him, but he also doesn't.
He was also thinking
know
about other
that.
things.
Yeah. So I think that's still a question mark.
But maybe aluminum's weird. Maybe aluminum actually wouldn't shine brightly and it'd just be nothing to a shard, maybe.
It's hard to say.
Because the whole point with the the Adium cache was that it was already surrounded by metal, so Ruin would never know that it's actually there.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you just dumped a hunk of metal in the ocean, like that, hey, it's there. It's a big hunk of metal. There we go. But yeah, we don't really know the details. But
like, even still, like, it's not going to be that big of a chunk.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So it's like the ocean is big.
The ocean is big.
What
Ian 2021.
What this makes me curious about is just like, where's Ba Adomishram? Like, if you have an unmade hidden somewhere, somehow, like, the ancient Rashorans managed to hide an unmade well enough that, like, we have absolutely no idea where she is. And this just makes me even more curious about all of that. And even more so than me caring about, like, how secure the thrill is.
That is true. And Brandon's even saying, as we talk about a certain other unmade who is somewhere locked in a gemstone that might come up in the next book, maybe we'll talk more about this. We better get some Adomishram stuff. I think that Brandon's just being a troll there.
I was gonna say,
you hope.
I think even without this comment, I think Shinovar is a great place for Adomishram to be in. For thematic reasons, for narrative reasons, but also for the fact that we know that Odium's forces have been focusing on Shinovar as of this most recent return, and that's a great reason for them to be interested in that place.
Yeah, and all of our teams going to Shinovar, so sure, why not? That seems reasonable. Cool.
Our next question was talking about actually how our website 17th Shard got its name, which came from Brandon.
Yes. Before Way of Kings came out.
Yes, like way back. And Brandon said, "Oh, you should name yourselves the 17th Shard. That's a cool little nod to something in universe." Before anyone, and then Brandon corrects himself and says, "You really don't know what they are even yet."
No, we don't.
We're like, "Yeah, we don't." So Brandon then confirms that if he writes the Silverlight novella, they will be involved in that.
Right.
So we would get to see some 17th Shard stuff
Awesome.
if that happens. But
awesome.
Even more reasons to be hyped for Silverlight.
Yeah, that's true. Because that place is apparently weird.
So mysterious.
Very mysterious.
I don't know if I'm more excited about Silverlight or like Dragonsteel.
I mean, I'm more excited for Dragonsteel, to be perfectly honest. I do want to see the Shattering. I want to see Hoyd and Race being friends, and then that not going great. Sounds awesome. To me, but
also for all of you grammar nerds out there, our website is with numerals, the 17th Shard, and the in-world world hopping organization is spelled out with all letters 17th Shard.
Yeah, so, I knew that if we made our domain and we spelled it out, no one would ever be able to spell it right. So I just went with numerals. So I think I made the right call there. Gotta be honest.
Now we can differentiate between if we're talking about the fan site or the world hopping organization.
That's right. That's a good thing to note.
So this next one is from Feather, and is talking about, like, especially with the live streams this year, you get lots of questions from the fandom. How do you feel about the culture around Words of Brandon? Do you ever worry the fandom takes them too seriously?
Who would ever do podcasts about Words of Brandon? That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah. And Brandon is like, he does worry, and he tries to impress that Words of Brandon are not set in stone. Yep. They're canon unless he decides to change them in the books. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, you can take them with a grain of salt, and if it contradicts something in the book takes precedence.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But he goes into, like, he grew up in Wheel of Time fandom, so like he is used to this to a certain extent.
Okay.
And he would rather people be paying too much attention than nobody paying attention.
That's true. That's a very positive outlook that Brandon has. I'm not surprised. Brandon generally has an optimistic outlook for most things.
And then he talks about how he does screw Words of Brandon up a lot of time, where he answers questions that aren't actually being asked.
Yeah, it's worth noting that even in the fluid canonicity of words of Brandon, people should be aware of the context of where the WAB is coming from, right? So if Brandon is walking down the street and he's having a conversation with his family, and then a crazy homeless guy just runs up to him
named Argent
and is like, I have a home.
For now.
Brandon purchases Evgeni's house and
No.
Just him, not the rest of his family.
Yeah, only
crazy homeless guy who's not Argent runs up to him and just dumps some question at a knife point, gunpoint, and
This is getting
Brandon,
knife gunpoint. Jesus.
It's a bayonet.
Very
yeah. At that, because look, just go with it. I know there is some implausibility
This
in this
is the
scenario.
rails. This is where we are.
but like, and so but Brandon is still distracted by the conversation with his family, and so he's just like,
Raffo.
17.
I really want to know what this guy asked.
and just like gives an answer and continues walking, and the
Tell me
guy's
about
like,
void binding.
Yeah. And so like
Don't
the
do
fact
this. Don't do this.
the fact that Brandon was distracted at the moment or thinking about something else needs to be kept in context when kind of weighing the plausibility of like of the swab in the future.
Also, I generally just don't trust Brandon to make timeline calls on the spot because
Or science calls.
or science calls. we'll see later in this where Brandon's like, I think Rhythm of War is the furthest along in the timeline. I was like, that's not what you said. It's like, oh yeah, that is what I said, right? So it's like anytime Brandon says a timeline thing, I'm like, I don't think you should trust that at all unless that's consistent with what he said before.
It's important to remember that Brandon does not keep the whole Cosmere in his head. Like, there's an internal wiki that keeps track of all the fiddly details
And
stuff.
Karen has the timeline, and trust Karen for timeline details. And Brandon's just like, I just wrote a cool story, make it work.
So anything you get off the cuff from Brandon, like citation needed. Until there is a citation, that's not permanent.
Like, I don't think we talked about this on air, but I remember, like, when Rhythm of War came out, there were, like, tons of, like, really long YouTube videos and from Brandon, and I think there was one with Peter and Karen. And they were talking about how at the end of Rhythm of War, Brandon, like, really didn't want there to be an additional day. And Karen went through all the, like, stuff to try and fit the last day of Rhythm of War into a day, and then Brandon's like, okay, yeah, we can do this another day. Brandon just writes a cool story. The continuity with timeline definitely comes later. So yeah, I'm still not convinced that Era 2 is going to be between the two halves of Stormlight until like we get some really concrete details about those things. Brandon can change that whenever he wants, if it fits in his behind-the-scenes narrative that we don't really know. So,
so keeping up with, we're never going to have somebody read the question that they actually ask.
Hey, I read mine.
Ian asked the question about the popularization of the term fabrial in the same way that the term Ansible was popularized to mean instantaneous communication device, and how would Brandon feel about Fabrial doing a similar thing, which expectedly he would be thrilled if that happened.
You've wanted to ask that for a long time, Ian.
I have. That has been my, like, if I ever go to like a signing, like that was going to be my like general Q&A question.
Yep.
Now I have to come up with a new one again, but
yeah, I tried to adopt that question, and it was in my list for several years, but Ian beat me to his own question.
Yeah,
which is impressive with how many questions Argent has asked.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Argent obviously wasn't trying hard enough.
That's what it is. Yes, the lack of trying.
Oh boy.
But this does make me very happy because now I can use the term Fabrial with zero compunction.
So in this next question was asked how people knowing more about the Cosmere changed how you've written the books, and if he's put in more connections or fewer than he planned. And Brandon says he's put in more. And that's really something that he felt like he can do since the creation of the internet. And before the internet, he doesn't think that like before fan wikis and things like the Copper Mines, that's not something that he could do. And it's also sort of what made things like the MCU possible.
It's always a topic of some contention, I think, about how much connection is too much connection in the Cosmere. And
people didn't even like Oathbringer. I thought it was too much.
Yeah. And especially with Rhythm of War, like Rhythm of War it's not like a full kind of blown like a Cosmere crossover story, but it really feels like it's getting there, right? I think it's still fine.
I also think it's still fine. I think if you're a Stormlight only reader, I think Rhythm of War is still fine because there's just like, oh, there's other places, and oh, this Vasher guy's weird.
But I think the WandaVision parallel is especially noteworthy in this because I wouldn't say WandaVision is necessarily like a crossover MCU story. Like it's still very much about Wanda and about Vision. And yeah, you need some context to know like who Wanda is and who Vision is. But like you don't need to know about Iron Man, you don't need to know about Spider-Man or Thor. Like they're mentioned, and it really helps if you know like how the events got to WandaVision. But you don't need to know these things. And I think Rhythm of War feels very, very similar to that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I have always said that people who are into the MCU and into the Cosmere overestimate how much knowledge you need to enjoy these stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed WandaVision. I still haven't seen Age of Ultron.
I mean, you're not missing much.
A ton. Yeah.
Like, I've seen like Infinity War and Endgame.
There you go.
And it's actually, I was just talking with my sister a couple weeks ago because like she'd been hearing about WandaVision. It's like, do I have to watch anything? It's like just like find a video, like a short like 10-minute video, like to like catch you up on like what you should know going in. It's like you don't have to watch like every MCU movie to enjoy WandaVision.
And Marvel knows that because they are providing those 10-minute videos like on Disney Plus.
Oh, really?
Oh,
there you
go. They have Marvel Legends. It's like 10-minute recaps of the characters for the TV shows.
Hey, there you go.
This is a really interesting thing that I noticed. Like even like normal TV shows that aren't like big crossover things are starting to do this because they know that people lean on the internet to keep up with media.
Yeah.
Like I started probably a couple years ago. I watched like the first season of Good Girls on Netflix because it was on there and it looked interesting. It was fine. And then came back to Netflix a couple years later and they had a couple more seasons. And I was like, oh man, I totally don't remember whatever that first season was. You head over to YouTube and look, NBC has created a 10-minute recap of the first season. If you're lost, here you go. And like, this is just kind of what people do is you need... It doesn't even have to be a big crossover thing for people to want those sort of extra resources to help them keep track of everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nobody keeps everything in their head anymore.
No, they don't have to
for series and stuff.
Whereas like
even the most basic things are providing you with these resources.
Like late 90s, early 2000s, it would not be the same.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of World of Warcraft, popular MMO. You may have heard of it. Recently, as in the last couple of expansions, started doing kind of cross-media narrative. So previously, in the lead up to a new expansion, they would release a novel that kind of ties the events from the previous expansion into the new one and it's a novel, it's a story. And recently, they've started doing they do the novel, but they also do like short comics and they do short stories and they do videos and do like all of these different media formats that touch on all like a bunch of different aspects of the tie-over, the crossover story. And then going into the new expansion, you're kind of almost expected to have consumed all of these to have the full context of what is going on, which is a bit controversial, but also a lot of people just consume all of these things.
Yeah.
The Kingdom Hearts method of media crossover.
That is true.
Star Wars has started doing with that. Like they just did their new publishing initiative, like the High Republic.
Yep.
Where it's like they got a team of writers together. And so like there are novels, there are middle grade novels, like there's comics, there's like all these different things, but like with a cohesive story team. Make sure like they all fit together.
Yeah. It's interesting. I really don't think if you're a main Stormlight person that you have to read Warbreaker before Stormlight. Like honestly, you don't. Like you'll figure it out from context that Nightblood's really powerful. You'll figure it out long before that. Like is super important.
It's enough to know that Nightblood is a weird shard blade. You don't need to know that it comes from a different world.
No, or the details of how it was created, because that honestly doesn't really even come up here.
I think this idea of like having the big crossover MCU style multimedia experience is something that people are realizing a lot of people enjoy if you want to go deep and dig into all of the little crossovers and all of the little different kinds of media. Like I think that's something that more works are starting to cater to. And I think the sort of like the balance that people are trying to find is having enough depth and cool crossover stuff for the fans that do want to dig super deep, but also having your story be cohesive on the surface level for people who are just here for, I want to read the thing and then I'm done. I don't want to spend months of my life on this.
Yeah.
And so I think Brandon walks that line really well. And I feel like he kind of got a jump start. I think other people are now kind of figuring out like, ooh, we can have a big cinematic universe or whatever.
Yeah.
And keep fans really engaged. But yeah, you do, if you go too far on one side, you do get the Kingdom Hearts problem where it's like, you have to play all of these games on all these different consoles and some of them aren't available anymore. But if you don't know who these people are and it's confusing. Versus having your crossovers be so subtle that there's not really any depth to analyze for the fans who do want to go hardcore.
Reading Stormlight and Mistborn, you'll be fine. Honestly.
Pretty much.
All right. So the next question was from Ian. He said, you killed Reyes this book. Can you talk about why you decided to kill him off and have Taravangian be Odium instead? Was that always part of the plan? So another long one for Brandon. This is a very long one.
This is a very long.
Holy cow!
this is one that's over a full page in the actual thing.
That's why I've highlighted.
I like about halfway through. There's a line where Brandon says, "There's a long-winded, perhaps a little wishy-washy answer to you."
Have fun editing this, Ben.
So Brandon's answer is a little long, but I'll read some snippets from it. He said the reason Reyes needed to go. He had been essentially defeated at the end of Oathbringer when Dalinar does not go over to him. All his rage and everything he's trying to do cannot make that happen. He's defeated, at least in a philosophical sense. Now you can bring a defeated enemy back to be a threat again. You can find a new way to make them a threat. But I knew in this book, Kaladin wasn't going to fall to him either. But once you've had 2 books in a row with the characters' machinations not with things stymied by the heroes, you need a different villain at that point. And so Brandon basically is saying that Reyes was basically defeated by Dalinar in Oathbringer. He's kind of turned away again by Kaladin. And so at that point, you get into the 5th book and he's kind of a lame duck enemy that's not really interesting to anybody anymore. And so that was his decision to, I guess, when he restructured Stormlight Archive and moved Oathbringer up to book 3.
Rather than book 5.
The way the things played out, he needed to swap out Reyes with a different villain. He says that Taravangian is much more identifiable as a villain. And I think that's the gist of it. There's a lot of development Brandon has done for Taravangian to really make him really well suited for the role, I think.
Yeah.
So
It's a very good foil for Dalinar in many ways.
It's such a good foil. Like, I'm so pumped for book 5 because of that change. Like, it's such a great change, and it's gonna go so badly.
Yeah, when you realize what's happening in that scene, it's like, oh, this is scary.
This is really scary.
Taravangian becoming Odium, like, yikes. Oh, that's
Major
so
yikes.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like definitely up until that point, you're starting to realize like, oh yeah, like Rey says Odium can be defeated. Like we've seen him be defeated twice. Radius is gone now. Like
Yikes.
Yeah.
Ooh.
There's
Rey says Odium was defeated, just not by the person we wanted him to be.
yeah.
I think a big factor in what made Reyes as Odium kind of scary is how there's a lot of unknowns. He's terrifying because you've never met Odium, and then he walks onto the screen, and he's very powerful. He's scary. We don't know much about him. The fact that we spent now kind of Oathbringer and especially Rhythm of War really getting to know him a lot better, and that kind of takes away that mystery that's attached to him.
Yeah.
And so I think it's definitely a good call on that front as well, because Taravangian is a villain that we know who's scary for specific reasons that we already understand, and so now he's been given power that makes those things more scary.
Mm-hmm. And at the end of this, Brandon says that his outlines are pretty organic because he doesn't like plan out the character relationships. Like, he didn't plan who Shallan was going to end up with. That happened really organically, and he does say that's like he was joking that the nefarious beta readers made it that way. And Brandon's like, no, that's not what happened. And they're just decisions Brandon makes on giving life to the characters and things. And so he's not a slave to the outline, because like when he moved Dalinar to book 3, that changed a lot of things, and he moved, listener stuff from this flashback book to Words of Radiance, right? That changed a lot of things too.
It would be really interesting one day to like hear what his outline was if it had gone the other plan. I wonder.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Because I wonder, because like then Odium probably would not have been defeated in the same way in book 3. Like the whole "you cannot have my pain" probably would have been the climax of book 5.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that the whole switch to Taravangian was probably not going to be necessary until that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because Odium wouldn't have had this streak of defeats in 3 and 4. So it's kind of crazy to think like how a change like that affects the scope of the Cosmere so much.
And yeah, you're totally right. And Brandon, I think somewhere else in this, Brandon was like saying, no, he does, though there could be other versions of these, he goes with the one that he feels makes the most sense. So like there probably is a version where Shallan ends up with Kaladin, but Brandon at least feels that that's a worse version of the book.
Mm-hmm. I think that point about Taravangian was scary before he was Odium is really important for why he works so well as a replacement for our like big bad.
Yep.
There's kind of a concept of like power makes people more themselves. And the fact that we already knew like how ruthless and cutthroat Taravangian was, like all of the things he was willing to do. Even on days when he was compassionate, we talk about like, smart Taravangian doesn't have emotions. Sure, he'll do evil things, but he still did the evil things when he felt really bad about it. Like he pushed through to keep doing the super, super bad things. And so now it's like, okay, this is a guy who nothing is off the table. Nothing is going to hold him back. If he thinks it's going to get his goals done, he will do it. And there are not moral boundaries that I don't think there's any that he's willing to not cross.
The ends always justify the means for Taravangian. Literally
completely.
Always.
This reminds me of a really interesting parallel that I hadn't noticed before, and that is all the way back in The Way of Kings, I think, when Hoid is speaking with Dalinar, I think like for the very first time or the second time or whatever, and Hoid's like, if obviously I don't remember the quotation, but if I have to let this world burn to keep Reyes contained, I will do that. I will do that with tears in my eyes, but I will let this world burn. And that's so similar to the way Taravangian approaches. Yeah, it hurts me to do this, but I will do this.
That's true. That's interesting.
Which adds an extra little bit towards that epilogue of Rhythm of War.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder, like, if like we didn't have the "you cannot have my pain" moment until book 5, and like Taravangian doesn't ascend. Like, where would Taravangian have gone? Because it's like, this is kind of what he was being built up to, like with his gift from cultivation. Like, how would Brendan have used that in a different way?
Yeah. And like he says, there's different options and opportunities. So it's like, it's just so interesting. But I definitely think this is a better book than the one where Dalinar has "you cannot have my pain" at book 5. Like, this is way more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It would be really interesting to ask some of these things once book 5 comes out.
Yeah, because then I bet we could get some actual like answers as to what the plan would have been. Speaking of planning, I asked, works out.
It only works out for you, though.
Yeah, it does.
No, it's going to work for Feather.
It's going to work for me, too. The one after this is me.
Where I ask, like, how much does he plan in the Cosmere? Going on that same line. It was actually so good in that Brandon episode that we had our carefully plotted list of questions, and Brandon goes on this long thing about planning, and then it's like, well, let's talk about some planning things. It worked out. Yeah. There was some nice flow that we didn't even intend that worked. Anyway, just like things with like the Black Sphere being anti-investiture, Testament Shallan, were those part of the plan or options? He doesn't really talk about the Shallan Testament thing, but he does talk about anti-investiture a lot. So he says those were always options, and anti-investiture has been pretty core for a long time. And there are a couple reasons for this. And he says he needed to get resources into the Cosmere for use in the future, and anti-investiture is one of those. And he's pushing Stormlight to be more Magitech and pushing Mistborn to be more Earth analog tech. With some fantastical things, but like if you have a radio on Scadrial, it's a radio. But like on Roshar, things are just going to be like all Magitech all the time, basically, with weird airships. And he wants anti-investiture to be in the Cosmere, and he, basically wanted a way to kill Radiants, because Radiants are super powerful and magical healing, and anti-investiture does that real good. It definitely brings the sense of danger back, and he talks about how in the Cosmere, like, coming back to life is a theme, but this is anti-investiture is the key way to kill a cognitive shadow. Works great.
Dead is dead.
Very dead. Like Lezian's dead. And so he needed that Cosmere. No, you're super dead. There's no way you're coming back. Which, to be fair, is kind of good, because Brandon does tend to bring back a lot of characters. So
I think this part about like we need real, very tangible threats to our radiance, and this threat of permadeath was really the part of this answer that clicked with me. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. And I know I've talked about like Stormlight is Destiny, but this is something that Destiny is also concurrently figuring out. About you have a setting where most of your main characters are immortal and can come back from dying over and over, and that's part of the gameplay mechanics of like, you die, somebody comes and reses you. It's no big deal. All of a sudden, Destiny's story has started getting good because they started finding ways to subvert that. And they started like, we're going to kill a major Guardian character. We're going to have assassination threats. Your characters are actually really in danger, and you're going to feel it, and you might lose your faves. And I think seeing how much that's improved Destiny's story, like Destiny's story was not that good. Now it's getting much better because we added this thread. Like Brandon's stories already were good. Oh, but look, we're adding the thread, and it really does just like pack so much more punch into a plot when you have those like, oh, we're really in danger now. They might not make it out. Ooh.
I know I was talking with Murphy Napier about Rhythm of War, and she definitely felt that in Rhythm of War there weren't that high of stakes, right? That like Kaladin was never gonna fall, and like Kaladin's super powerful, and it's like, yeah, our Radiants are really overpowered, to be perfectly honest. And like Brandon did pretty good, I felt, with like the suppression Fabrial to like make Kaladin's super awesome healing to be less effective and have more stakes. But like, man, stakes are good. Stakes really like add tension, and when you don't have stakes, it really isn't that exciting. So I'm glad he introduced this, because that definitely brings a, oh crap, what is going to happen in book 5? That is not good. That is really not good. We could all die.
Interestingly, I think my favorite part of this WAP, and this is probably one of my top few WAPs from this entire interview, is kind of the whole Rashar's future is Magitech, Cadriel's future is Earth analog thing, which in retrospect was always kind of going to be the case. Like, this is not some new revelation that Brand is making, but like contextualizing it in such a way. Yeah. So like the future of the Cosmere are these two superpowers, which on one end is very tech focused and on the other end is very magic focused. And so you have this really interesting clash of not only technologies, magical or less magical, but also like cultural and stuff like that. So
it's gonna be awesome.
I think that is real. Like, I think that's a great end of the Cosmere kind of big picture.
It's gonna
clash.
be so cool. So cool.
Very like Civil War-ish, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Marvel.
Makes it interesting that conflict is the third Mistborn trilogy.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to be from the perspective of the Earth-like tech. So it's
I'm never sure how. Like, I think he said that Era 4 books in that last Mistborn trilogy will be like Stormlight length. So it might be more broad than just Mistborn. I'm not.
But he still characterizes it as a Mistborn.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool.
So the next question was from me during the live stream, and basically bringing up that Navani and Raboniel's storyline was definitely a favorite in Rhythm of War.
Yes. And
that I'm sad that we're probably not going to get more Raboniel for a while, which Brandon confirmed, yes, anti-investiture death. She is gone. But we talked about the possibility of like having Herald flashbacks. And Brandon actually did some really cool answering and talking about like wanting to show off the Fused and their viewpoints, because we hadn't gotten to do that yet in the series. And he talked about having her waiting in the wings as Race Odium became, in my mind, less of a threat because Dalinar had just defeated him, which we talked about that a little bit before. So Raboniel was then the more personal antagonist who could approach that in a different way. Race was the unknowable evil, and she was the very knowable antagonist. I think it really worked. I think he did a really good thing. He talks about making Navani a main character, and I think it worked brilliantly. Like, Navani really shone in Rhythm of War.
Good. It was really good.
Her dynamic with Raboniel, like, they just had amazing rapport. They had an amazing relationship. It was a stellar plotline.
And Navani finally feeling she's worthy at the end. It's like, yeah.
It's like so the line is like, if you are not a scholar, I have never known one.
Yeah. Yep. So good. Cool.
But Raboniel's great.
Raboniel's great.
Yeah, she's definitely been a fan favorite.
It is very sad she's dead. But Herald flashbacks, I like how Brandon's like, oh yeah, you could see her in Herald flashbacks. I hope so. She's great.
Please bring her back.
Yes.
Yeah. So in the next WAP, he kind of continues on from the last one and mentions that in the alpha, like the first draft that went to writing group, he didn't have the scene where L kills Lezian permanently. And his writing group rebelled because they thought Lezian survived, and Brandon reassured them
that.
And he goes on to mention is like all these weird fused who've been around way too long. The guy that gave his name to Moash.
Yep. Like, yeah, I mean, Lezian sticking around for another book would have been not good because he like. I mean, Reyes had some setbacks, but like Lezian was like shoved into the ground and utterly humiliated. So it's like he had to go.
Yeah,
no other choice.
I think there may have been a world where there was an interesting story with him to explore, as like he is this beaten down former legend, but also a shadow of his former self, and then he tries to do things. But like his character is so kind of direct and driven by primal instincts. Like the way he's portrayed is he would just keep running into Kaladin again and again and be defeated again and again. That's just not like he's not the kind of character who's going to like try to innovate and figure out what so like it wouldn't even make for a good underdog.
Yeah, and if like he had survived and Raboniel didn't, like Raboniel like was a better villain than Lezian was. So if like you killed off the good villain and kept the like sucky villain, not a good look.
After you've been beaten down that far, like your only recourse if you want to stay alive is to become a comic relief villain. And I don't think Stormlight really needed one of those, but like that's the only way you can keep that character going forward.
Yeah. But in a different version of the story, Lezian as a comic relief villain sounds amazing.
All the fused are just like giving him crap all the time. It's like, you suck.
He just keeps showing up.
I will get you next time, Kaladin.
Like rocketing off, like Team Rocket.
I was just about to mention.
Everyone blasting off again.
Yep. Give him a little AVR to give him crap that talks back to him. Nice. Write that fanfic. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Our next question comes from Eric once again.
Yes, this is one Jess really wanted me to ask.
Yeah, it's something that's been on some people's minds. Essentially, well, we see Veo in the scene at the bar where she's expressing interest in women. Was that scene meant to canonically confirm that Shallan is bisexual? And Brandon says yes. That was meant to be read as Veo legitimate. I realize you can read that as she's just joking around, but no, that's actually Veo expressing interest in ladies.
And then I wanted to ask, like, well, there were some people who were thinking it's like, oh, maybe Veil's bisexual, but not Shallan. But Brandon does say that, Shallan is bisexual. That has gotten removed off Shallan's Coppermine article for years since that initial confirmation. So I'm just really happy to have like the most solid WOB, so no one can ever like remove it, because it is. I mean, it's always been pretty clear, but like this is very clear. But it's interesting how Veil would be comfortable in saying those feelings, whereas Shallan probably wouldn't be culturally, but yeah, she's bi. So, yay, Shallan's bi. Double, triple, super confirmed. Not just Veil. So that's great.
This is something like, even though it's like very explicitly in the books and now very explicitly confirmed in WOBs, people still want to miss this fact.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it's like, if you know that and then you read the books, it's like really obvious. Like if you already knew from earlier WOBs before Rhythm of War, that's like, oh, Shallan's bi, then that scene at the bar is really blatant. It's really blatant. So.
But obviously, like, you're not supposed to be relying on WOBs as a reader.
Yeah, no, that's true. Like, I like that it was very blatant in this book. Yeah.
And so I wonder if now we should expect to see just a brief nod in book 5 or later on where like Shallan remarks on this, right? So it's now from her point of view where there's no longer veil.
Yeah, that would be good.
But also maybe that's too much. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder if Brandon feels like he has checked it off its list. It's canon now. We can move on with plot things.
I mean, there's a lot to do in book 5, but
yeah.
Maybe we have a brief aside with May Aladar.
I don't think she was even in Rhythm before, was she? I don't think
Not that we know.
Hey.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh man.
The whole like original like observation began with with Shallan's descriptions of Yasna, right? So it doesn't even have to be like a thing. Like it's just a one-off comment that she makes is all it really requires.
Yeah.
I don't know if Brandon will think to do that, but I wouldn't take much.
And I mean, bisexuality is a spectrum, right? So
yeah. And that was one of those things like before we had the swab and people would be like, oh no, it's just Veil. It's not Shallan. And it's like, no, the original questions were asked before Veil even existed.
That's true.
This is based on the way that Shallan acts in Way of Kings and the way she talks about how beautiful and perfect Yasna is and how she's so lovely.
Gay.
And you opened a box of storms within me, brightness, and all.
Wait, is that a line?
That is a canon line of Shallan begging Yasna to let her stay.
That's really gay. That's like when Matt was describing the scene with Dalinar and Kadash, the wrestling. That's. It's not very difficult to characterize that as pretty gay.
Nothing to move the plot forward, like a couple of half-naked men wrestling and grunting.
And talking about how they used to be so close before betrayal of trust or whatever it was.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Jeez. Yep. It's pretty gay.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing what things Brandon can write when he's not intending to write them, and then
yeah. So in this next one, Brandon was talking about the decision to reincorporate Veil into Shallan. He says he recognized that could be controversial in the DID community because there are various different opinions on whether incorporating alters is good for an individual or not. And the decision he made on this, it was good for Shallan in that circumstance, using his best understanding of the psychology and the treatment recommendations and knowing both sides of the argument. It was the right thing for Shallan right then. That doesn't mean necessarily that she has to incorporate Radiant in order to be healthy. I will just point that out.
And it's good that like he is pointing that out, because I think in the book Shallan makes a comment about like reincorporating Radiant at some point.
Yeah, and so that doesn't need to be true for every system, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good thing to be able to point to of this was a decision that Brandon, made with
this
intentionality and trying to understand the actual context. And because I'm sure that there are people who would think, oh, he's just someone who doesn't get it and he just assumes that this is the solution for everyone. And I think it's good to be able to say, no, he did know about this. He tried to research about this and came to a decision for this character. I think it would be great to have representation of a DID system that is stable and is not looking to reincorporate and doesn't feel that they need to do that.
I don't know if we're going to get space for that anytime soon.
I don't know if we're going to have space for it. It didn't end up being the way that Shallan's story went.
Yeah.
But
we still have Radiant, so like I guess I don't know if you can argue that, but to me it seems like if Radiant sticks around, like you could still have that be true there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we'll have to see, because there is the line of like that they were planning to reincorporate.
Yeah,
with Radiant.
I kind of feel like it's still pointing in that direction, that it's like right for Shallan, but that doesn't mean it's right for everyone with DID.
But something might happen in book 5 where it's like they decide not to incorporate for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's
I think it's possible.
Yeah,
I think we can just basically boil this down to Brandon did this with intent.
Which is good.
All right, so the next question was by Ian. And he's basically just digging for some more information about Raboniel with her being gone. He asked about a few different things about whether she knew about that Sunraiser was Elikar's blade when she was talking to Navani about Raboniel's daughter's death, about revealing to Vinley the survival of the listeners. Brandon chose to raffo most of those. And he did address the one about the grief over her daughter's death, though. Brandon says that she was being completely authentic there. She wasn't just putting on a show. And her desire was to bring an end to the war. She's tired of the war, and her primary goal, he says, was to end the war. He says that she believed that the research for anti-investiture was what she thought was the best way to make sure that the fighting would end one way or the other. And that's what she was after, even if it was at odds with Odium's plans at times. So,
cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
I still want to know the other parts of my question, but well, it's like I did think like she was being genuine here. I think Raboniel was more genuine than not in Rhythm of War, but that's my own interpretation.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
That was definitely the reading I had of her as well. And I think that's why she was so compelling, was that a lot of times she did seem to just be genuine and truthful, and it worked.
Yeah, like it reminds me a lot of like Emperor's Soul, where like Shai was able to like manipulate Gautona by being genuine.
Yeah.
The best liars are those who tell the truth most of the time.
Yeah.
Fun Brandon quote. What's that, Mistborn? I think that's Mistborn.
I think it is, yeah.
So in this next one, Ian asks that, hey, we got 4 new shards. What made you want to do that? And Brandon basically says, oh, well, we're getting to the point where there'll be a lot of verbal gymnastics to not say them. So he finally decided on a few new shards, but then there's still 2 shards and he hasn't picked the right words. And so like sometimes he just has the wrong synonym. Like he could have chosen hatred for odium, but odium's obviously a lot better. And I do think Brandon mentioning ingenuity like a year ago, like I feel like he was trying to get the right synonym for that one, and I think that has become a invention, in my opinion. So
it's like 4 years ago, but
well, a while ago.
Wow.
But how does time work?
4 years.
I don't think it's been 4 years.
Time is fake.
So anyway, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was definitely a surprise.
Oh yeah.
But a welcome one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Had lots of good discussion about those new names.
Yes.
It's I've mentioned this on Discord a couple of times, but it was so much fun early on after Rhythm of War came out to like lurk in the tagged spoilers chat and just like watch people react to the chapter, what was it, like 24 epigraph, where we get one shard.
It's like,
and then the next epigraph,
3
more.
It's pretty great. It was really great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So the next one is one that Eric asked, and it was about Rosharan's calling everything like magical surge binding.
Yeah.
So the clarifying question is, what does Chris, someone who's not Rosharan, call what the fused do surge binding? And the answer was yes. And so we still don't know anything about void binding. And Brandon says he will
eventually.
But will we? Will we ever? What if void binding's
a
meme and it doesn't actually exist?
Like
and
that.
it's
On the
just a
final
big
page of Cosmere,
April Fool's joke.
On Vax.
God, I was so upset to be wrong about this. I was ready to die on the hill that the fused were void binding and surge.
Well, you're wrong.
I really think void binding is back half, like Renarin point of views.
Yeah, we're not gonna get void binding in book 5. Book 5 has plenty to do instead to mention it's like, and here's void binding, what's up? But I mean, then again, he didn't put an anti-investiture into the last one, so we wouldn't have expected that. So who the hell knows?
I wouldn't be surprised if he slips it into book 5 as like the surprising thing. It's like, oh, and then we won't really explore it and understand it until.
Yeah, some things like maybe have like a brief moment with like Renarin does something and then he's like, I don't think I surge bound.
I've never liked the idea that Renarin was the Voidbinder. Just because I feel I know.
That's like a back half title, like in like the Sleepless Things. Right? It's like the Voidbinder. Dun dun dun.
Yeah. I mean, I can totally see that.
I can totally see that.
Yeah.
Although the Son of Thorns.
Son of Thorns is a great title.
That's also good.
But like,
I always felt like
that's like his own right, not just like he's the son of Dalinar.
That's true.
Valid.
He needs his own thing. But yeah, the thing about Renarin being a Voidbinder, like what's happening with Renarin being Voidbinding, it's just, which I may just need to accept that I'm totally wrong about everything I thought about Voidbinding and eat the crow and shut up about it. But like, the stuff that's happening with Renarin is new. Like, it's never happened before.
How does Chris know about the 10 levels of void binding? Is that what you're saying?
We have a whole chart that has like 10 different things. Like, it feels like void binding should be an established thing that has happened, and people, obviously not our main cast, but someone out there knows about the different kinds of void binding, and this was a thing that people did in the past.
What if
Renarin being so new and weird is like, how is that
it's like,
fit into
it's like the mountain says to Venli about stone shaping, like old things become new things, or whatever that line is.
Oh, we gotta do a stone shaping podcast.
Things that are new but out of design.
Oh, hey, we haven't talked about the Everstorm and Desolations post Rhythm of War. We gotta do that one.
Yeah.
It is so difficult for me not to go on like void binding theories and tangents because I have like a million of them.
I know. But what if someone just looked into the future and saw the void binding chart and then like wrote it down now? And then that was
I legitimately think this chart might be from the future.
Hate that so
like,
much.
It's really plausible though.
No. Not that it exists in the somebody looked into the future and created it. It's that we haven't gotten to the point in the timeline where that chart has been created yet.
Right.
Oh no, I like mine. I like my idea.
They're both brain twisty. It feels like if Renarin is a Voidbinder, then that would be like if all of a sudden our new Radiants just like found a new 11th Surgebinding order of Knights Radiant, and it's like, what?
Yeah, sure.
What's happening?
Yeah,
no.
Book 5.
This is a thing.
Order.
We know what the 10 things are.
Yeah, Brandon's like, we already talked about enough orders.
We have a wob that Renarin is technically not void binding. Am I right? I think that's yours, Argent. So I'm assuming that he's doing something similar, but
unclear.
But then again, I believe it was an Argent wob that like
Words of Radiance
that like what is going on with Renarin is related to that chart.
Related to.
So that might be like, oh, they're both like connected to Odiomi thing.
Related to. That's such a Brandon Weasel word.
Yeah.
Like, that can mean so many things.
That's a paraphrasation is what I was going to say.
A paraphrasation. Yes, that's a word.
I mean, for all we know, Renarin could be the third esoteric system that Chris talks about, which I am.
No.
More esoteric than the 10 levels of void binding. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Hashtag evict Grace from this podcast for saying things like that.
No, it's like you have a surge binding and void binding, and the esoteric system is like a combination of the two, and that's what Renarin's doing.
It would have been so neat and clean to have the Knights Radiant be Surge Binders and the Fused be Void Binders. They use Void Light, they use Stormlight. We just could have kept it neat. They have their own charts. It's cool. They're similar, but they're done.
Yeah, but there's 9. But yet there's 9 brands of Fused, but yet 10 levels of Void Binding. So what the hell?
They left one in the car. All right, they'll find it. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm just so mad.
Speaking of more brain twisty things, I'm sure this next one is very Lightian.
Yeah. So this one is from Eric.
Hey.
In Dawn Shard, we learned that intent and command are two different things, whereas in Warbreaker, Vasher is clearly conflating these two into just saying it's the command. What's the difference between intent and command?
Yeah.
And I do like his answer here. It makes total sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so Brennan says, intent encompasses more understanding. Command is specifically narrow. A lot of times, these things are going to be conflated because they basically can be. Like if Vasher creates an awakened thing and says, go get me those keys, the intent is, I need the keys to get out of here. I want to be free. The command is, go fetch keys. Those are two different things, but they are working toward the same goal. It is important in Cosmere terms that the intent is understood, even if sometimes words that can speak them are clunky and smaller in scale by nature than the intent. Let's say the intent of a shard encompasses more than the word that the shard is described by. It is a similar thing that the intent of a command is often vaster than the actual words spoken, and the magic can grasp that intent, not just the command, depending on the magic system and how good you are at it, and things like that. The words are there to focus intent. How about that? Chaos, bringing the old word focus back into it. Let's talk about body focuses. What's going on there? Brandon, I'll throw you a kernel on that one in the 5th book if you watch for it. That old Risharan philosophy will be actually relevant for a small thing happening in the 5th book.
What does that last part mean? We all thought the body focuses had nothing to do with anything. But yeah.
I think, like, they're relevant. They're not focuses in the same way that they're not an actual magic focus, but there's something going on with them.
Something going on. I do like this intent command distinction.
Yep.
I still don't know what how the Dawn Shards fit into this, but yeah, like this basically makes sense. So intent would be the visualization, in my opinion, because that's the greater understanding, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is pretty much how I was thinking of it. I'd have to go back and listen to the Dawn Shard episode to know for sure. But this is pretty much in line, I think, of what I was saying.
I've been meaning to go back and do that.
See who's right.
Well, so I think I said the opposite of what Brandon says here, but I described it in the way that is consistent with what he describes here.
I don't know. If you want to go listen to that Dawn Shard episode, go tell us who was right. Go listen to it, because I don't have time to re-listen to it. So
I think this one makes sense to me because it solves a meta-narrative problem, and therefore it's not just like realmatics in a bottle in a vacuum.
What do you mean?
But I can be like, so this is the sort of thing of like, Brandon needs to establish that his magic systems don't work like, it's not like computer programming. Like a computer will only do exactly what you put into it. Brandon needs to have that sort of like wiggle room in the story of you don't have to be perfectly, completely precise with the words that you say when you're doing the magic thing, because we can have this sort of like intent behind it, and the magic connects to the intent. You don't actually have to say the specific words completely. And I think this is something that he's kind of like...
Yeah, he talked about the adapter.
Yeah.
He did. Yeah.
I think this is sort of like a concept that Brandon does not want to put in the books. Like you see people talk about the Night Watcher, people are like, oh, I'm just going to like word my request super perfectly, and they're like, no, the Night Watcher doesn't work that way. Sorry, this isn't how it happens.
The only thing that does require the precision is cell magics, but like you still, like for Aeondor, you still have to intentionally draw the Aeon. You're not going to accidentally draw an Aeon. Cool.
I like this explanation a lot.
This explanation's good. Maybe I should actually do my intent command video. I don't know.
And like I think this one goes a lot more to explaining how like a shardic intent and intention are the same thing.
Yep. It does help.
very nice way.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
And how the intent of a shard is more than just the name of the shard, right?
Yeah.
Which like goes into odium. Like odium, the word odium doesn't describe all that he is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Great wob.
Great
I imagine we're going to be citing that one for
Oh yeah.
decades to come.
Yeah.
So this one is from Ian,
Yeah.
and
We wanted to talk about Thydakar and get like some
Yeah.
confirmations on this because there were some people in the fandom who were, let's say, in disbelief. So we wanted to follow up on that, basically.
yeah. So there's a lot of blabbing to the effect of
Lot of blabbing.
So the Brandon knew that there was going to be a large gap between the end of Mistborn Era 1 and what was originally going to be Mistborn Era 2, which is like the 80s Cold War type of thing. But he also knew that Mistborn was obviously going to be a very important world in the grand scheme of the Cosmere, and so he didn't want people to forget that Mistborn is important while he does like Stormlight things for a decade. And so he had a few plans on how to keep Mistborn relevant in people's minds, and one of them was the Alloy of Law, which by accident turned into 4 books instead of the 1.
As you do.
Mhm.
It would
happens
be
to
over a
everybody.
decade for that to all get out, so it worked out great.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. So he had that kind of as an idea. He had Mistborn's Secret History as an idea to keep people kind of not focused, but keep Scadrial in mind. He also has another Mistborn Secret History that he may or may not get to. Who knows how that's going to pan out. And he also had this idea of just like seeding little Mistborn connections into other works that he's working on. And so all of this was with the intent of making sure that people don't forget the Scadrial is an important place. And as it turned out, all of these things that he had been planning ended up being, things that had like Alloy of Law got published. It spawned a whole new trilogy. Mistborn's Secret History got published. Scadrian connections in Stormlight were a thing. And one of those connections obviously was Kelsier in his guise of Thydakar.
Yep.
So that's how we have, that happening in Stormlight. And then on a kind of a tangentially related note, what we have following is just kind of general stuff about the Ghost Bloods and Thydakar and Mraize and Ayatul.
He has his tight-knit team.
Yeah. There's 3 things I think are noteworthy in all of this blabbing. One of them is that the Ghost Bloods you see kind of immediately around Kelsier are not necessarily kind of similar to the Ghost Bloods that you see throughout the rest of the Cosmere. And what I mean by that is that Kelsier, because he's such a strong force of personality, such a strong character, the people who are around him are people that he can handpick. So very much like Era 1, like Final Empire type of stuff. The people in his immediate vicinity are people he can trust, but also people he can supervise. And so there's an implicit trust and understanding with that. But once you go to the other side of the Cosmere on, let's say, Roshar, the organization doesn't have this kind of supervision going on there. And so the behavior that we see from the Ghost Bloods is not necessarily the behavior that we would see from the Ghost Bloods around Kelsier, right? There's a potential for a disconnect there.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting point. Another interesting point is that Brandon expected us to kind of guess the Kelsier Thydakar thing or the Kelsier Ghost Bloods thing because the Ghost Bloods mentality, which is kind of survival of the fittest, was supposed to echo back survivorism to an extent. And honestly, that is not a thing I have seen in the fandom ever.
Not
before
really, but
this
it
one.
does,
Like,
it does
I
kind
don't-
of make sense. But
Yeah. In retrospect, it does. But I don't think anyone or maybe very few people. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I don't think anyone has picked up on that.
I think in like the months leading up to Rhythm of War's release, like people did start like theorizing that Thydakar was Kelsier.
Oh, when Brandon talked about how Thydakar was more Cosmere aware, and we were going to focus on
that's a
him.
bit in part 1 and stuff. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have that going on. There's a bit of a metaphor with Tor Publishing and Tom Doherty and how they're all assassins.
It was a little weird out of context, but like it made sense in context.
But it's a perfect metaphor. I'm like, top notch. I love it.
He was saying how it's like he would Tom Doherty would like foster some friendly competition, and so the best of the best would, be on top, and that's sort of like what Kelsier kind of does.
Yeah, but like also his presence
could make sure like it didn't become toxic. But now that Tom Doherty has retired, they're changing like all of that.
Yeah,
because
that's not a good idea.
Yeah. Without his presence and without his oversight, there is a potential for danger there.
Yeah, and then
and then all of this kind of ends with a bit of a note on Reyes and his interaction with Shallan and Lift.
And he's a few steps away from Kelsier, and so I was like, oh, they're not gonna be nice people, Reyes. And Brandon says, Reyes is nice. Reyes thinks he's nice.
Reyes would not say that he's not nice.
his version of nice is not other people's version of nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's my version of nice, though.
Yep. And he ends with, those Scadrians got to keep an eye on things. They like to meddle.
Yeah.
Specifically Kelsier, but
very... the Scadrial metal pun.
That's a pun that doesn't translate in text.
But also, there were 2 ferochemists in this book, so they do like to. Scadrians, not just Kelsier, likes to meddle and things.
Yep.
So that's the good old 3-pager.
This is more of a conversation. It doesn't exactly fit in the usual WoB mode that we have.
Yeah.
And Brandon talked a lot, so you should go listen to that. It'll be better than our secondhand telling. But
it was very interesting.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. So this next one was asked by Ian, and I'm happy I get to read it because this question was from a Shardcast episode where I suggested it, sort of. So it's every day in Castor. Kusakesh emerges from the sea at 7:46 in the morning. If the Iriali started practicing daylight savings time, would Kusakesh emerge at the old 7:46 or the new? Would it make a difference if all of Roshar was changing? And the answer is, they would not change their time based on the clocks being changed.
Which is fascinating. I don't know what it means.
Yeah. But it just matters that the perception of time is not why Kusakesh comes out at that time.
Yeah.
Which probably makes sense because 7:46 isn't a very strong concept in most people's heads, I guess.
The spiritual ideal of the timestamp.
It has a lot of spiritual integrity that time. That's what it has.
Yeah.
No, I wonder if it's like something to do with tides or the position of the celestial bodies, like something to that effect.
I think it's more that it's a time where some specific event happened, like maybe the Recreants or Honor died at that time, or some weird big event. I don't know. I don't know what big event would happen there, but Roshar has such complicated celestial mechanics that the tides would not be at all consistent. Have fun, Roshar and astronomers, to try and figure out where the hell the tides are. Good God, you got 3 moons, a sun, and 10 gas giants. Have fun with that. So I don't know. I think it's a certain time where something happened in particular, or at least that changed that Spren. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I've always thought.
But perception matters so much in the Cosmere that it's nice to know that it's not the result of perception in this specific case. Oh man, this one's so good, Josh.
Yep, this is a fun one.
Yeah.
So the next question was by Alyx. She said, I have to ask about the use of the word avatar for Thydekar, sending avatars.
Yep.
So she asked, does Kelsier actually have like a real avatar, like in the Cosmere sense of the word, or is this just a big lie? Brandon said that he is mostly lying through his teeth. So it's not canonical at this point. However, right now, Brandon imagines that Kelsier sends a Seon in his place with a big cloak wrapped around it. So so he could send the Seon off to speak through on his behalf.
It's a Seon in a trench coat. It's so good.
It literally is.
Yeah, there's some fan art of this, and it's just
oh man, we gotta find that. And also, he's still not able to get off Scadrial, so he's annoyed.
As of Era 2, he's so there's a little bit of confusion about timeline. It looks like for a moment there, but the conversation sorted that out, and Brandon cleared up that as of Era 2, Kelsier is still stuck on Scadrial.
Awesome.
He's perturbed.
I love this swap. One, because Kelsier's full of crim, and I called it so much. We started having conversations about avatars, and I was like, there's no way he has an avatar. He's such a liar. Brandon's like, yeah, he's totally lying.
He has no issue with lying.
I was right.
And then also the ones where I was wrong.
Oh, the Seon in a trench coat is just such a perfect mental image.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's legitimately hilarious. Could change, but I like to know that what Brandon's currently thinking is that. And he might come up with something cooler, but yeah. But,
excellent.
I look forward to hopefully being a beta for a future book where this is canonized and making my opinion of this needs to be this way, Brandon.
It needs to be a Seon in a trench coat. Very important.
Please let us meet Thydekar's trench coats.
Oh, I totally think Shallan could
I really hope we do.
We could totally see that in book 5. That's super plausible. Or maybe we'll actually see Eotl actually do something. That'd be nice.
Yeah. Shallan's basically using the same technique whenever she sticks a light weaving on pattern and sends him off to go play a recording.
That's true. It's
she'd be familiar with the technique.
Although she has gotten better at just, creating illusions and sending them off to do their own thing. Like she doesn't need to attach them to objects anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll use her own Seon to impersonate Thydekar.
Oh my god!
Oh, that would be amazing. but she wouldn't because the Seon shows the face, right?
But if she did an illusion of Kelsier's face, would the Seon detect the illusion or her actual face?
Oh, so she needs to go witness Kelsier's Seon and then take that and then do that again to troll Eotl and Reyes. That's solid. Right. This is very plausible. This is super plausible.
I love it.
Light weaving so overpowered.
The only issue is this Seon would know because I think they know what Spren they're connecting to or what Seon they're connecting to.
Yeah. But what if you just make light weaving of I mean, if it's Shallan's Seon, then
she's sending it.
Then if she's using her own, then she can just have that Seon totally lie. Potentially.
Also, she can just create an illusion that looks like
the Kelsier one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, Alyx asks about Glisten to me, Reyes and Renarin Spren, and they're very different from the regular Miss Spren, Dreaming Though Awake, a totally different naming style, and they use that be verb at the end of sentences, and she's drawing a parallel with Ink Spren, and Brandon says there are reasons, and he'll give more as the series progresses. So we'll see later, I guess, in Renarin's book 7.
I'm so curious about this. I want to know what's up with it.
Yeah.
I do like the line, he'll be older, he may be wiser.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It's one of those things that when you're in sort of beta reader brain, you're like, oh, this is a mistake. Brandon mixed up which Spren talk like this. He messed it up.
That's
you should
true.
fix this, Brandon. And then it goes to the final draft, and it's like,
guess there's
wait
a
a
reason.
second.
I think I actually
there is a
flagged
reason.
that as a potential mistake.
Yeah, I think people
I know
did.
we talked
'cause
about it.
You don't want Brandon to mess stuff up in the final book.
No, it's hard to flag errors when we don't have the full picture. So it's like, I don't know, is it an error? I don't know. It's pretty
Sometimes
tough.
he says it's not a mistake, and you go, what does that mean?
Are you sure? We'll find out. Let's hope it'll all come together, but let's hope. But yeah.
So this next question was also for me, and it was about the Renarin reveal, which we had a wonderful podcast.
We did 2 of them actually.
Renarin. But basically just telling Brandon like, oh, I thought it was something that it was just going to be a ship that wasn't ever canon. Like, oh, there's cool chemistry. I'm just gonna love it quietly in my heart and tell other people that I think it's cool. And Brendan points out that it does go back to Oathbringer. Yes, it does.
Yep.
The rock point of view scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's really interesting that he talks about like he looked for a place to get it into this book, and actually tried to like write scenes to put in Rhythm of War that were more explicitly, romantic leaning, I guess, with Renarin, and then said it will feel clunky, just do it in book 5, which is so fascinating that apparently we're going to get Renarin scenes in book 5.
I have no idea how that's gonna work.
I didn't that was not something I was expecting even after the reveal necessarily.
But Rand's like, yo, what's gonna happen? Let's do it.
Yeah. And so Brandon then talks about it was one of the things we were like, yeah, people picked up on the chemistry. He didn't reveal it himself during the live stream. Everyone guessed it. So that was like, it's working. People knew.
Yeah.
It was the only thing being guessed.
Yeah, the only thing in that stream. Yeah.
Brendan was like, there must be a bunch of guesses in the chat, and people were like, nope.
It's basically just for Lauren and Relaine.
This one.
It was a great moment. It was very funny.
Yeah.
And then Brandon talks about, I'm just going to go ahead and read this one. Talking about having 2 viewpoint characters. It's kind of one of his go-tos, right? To avoid tokenism. Try to make multiple characters who think differently. One of the worries was with Renarin being autistic, I don't want to conflate those 2 aspects of his personality. By having Relaine there, it lets me have diversity among a given representation in a single book. Just way more comfortable for me to write because it lets me make sure that I'm making people their personalities and not their defining attributes. Kaladin has depression. Kaladin is not depression. And that's a really important thing. Mm-hmm. If it's something I'm less familiar with personally, it's more important that I have a variety of viewpoints, even if it's something like making sure that Yasna is atheist and Kaladin is agnostic, and that I'm approaching their different worldviews from their personalities rather than as a cliche of some sort.
This is very interesting with Kaladin being agnostic, because it's like that doesn't even really like come to mind. But yeah, like Kaladin doesn't really care about religion. That's for sure.
Right.
Like it's like that makes sense.
It's almost the definition of agnosticism, right?
Yeah.
This is something that Brandon has talked about kind of a lot in writing excuses and in questions about writing and stuff like that. And I think it's really interesting that his kind of strategy of dealing with tokenism is, hey, just make sure you have different people that represent the same thing, but they represent it as different characters, as different people.
Yep.
Makes me wonder if we're gonna see another kind of more explicitly ace character in the near future, to just make sure that, although Yasna herself is like such a strong character that nobody's gonna say that she is in any way, shape, or form defined by her asexuality.
Yeah. It was one of those things, like, I think it does work across different books within the Cosmere. Like, we talk about autistic representation between Renarin and, like, Steris. But I think it is even better when you have multiple people within the same series interacting with each other and getting to be different expressions of things.
Yep.
And to a certain extent, like, the listeners are ace. Not that we've really... Like, we've seen a little bit of that. They're remarking like, oh, it's like humans are in mate form all the time, but it's like having like a more, I don't know, not conventional, but like a more human expression of asexuality, I think would be a benefit.
I think the listeners, or the singers, I should say, are a good example of this outside of the thing where they remark on how humans are inmate for all. Because like you read singer POVs and just the topic of sexuality just doesn't come up. It's not a thing they think about.
Yeah. I think this would be something I would love to see Brandon do, like a normal human non-binary character. Like the sibling is great, but the sibling is also not a person. And you get that with non-binary characters sometimes.
Not a
human.
Like not a human.
They're a robot or they're an alien and they have a weird third gender. And it's like non-binary people exist in the normal real human worlds. So I think that would be a good one.
Yeah.
For
it's just a matter of like, you can't cram every single thing in every book, right?
Yeah, you cannot. It just wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be good.
It could be.
Okay, I take that back. I guess you could. Yeah. I think there would.
It's like, I understand why Brandon isn't doing that, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't.
Yeah,
I agree. Okay, yeah, you absolutely could do that if you were comfortable in doing all of that. And I think that's what you're getting at, is that for a lot of these things, Brandon is not comfortable, and so he wants to take the time. He wants to research things. And
that's true.
I think that is a world building aspect that Brandon does a lot of really cool world building things, but gender and sexuality aren't necessarily ones that he world builds around necessarily in terms of his societies and such. Like, I haven't finished the Mirror Empire yet, but that was one of the things that really stood out to me in the Mirror Empire is like, it's very different. These societies feel super, super, super different in the ways that they approach gender and sexuality. And so that's something some authors really love to focus on and dig into and make things where, you know,
it's not like
certain things are way more, very different. Some things are normal to them that are kind of outliers for us. So it's cool. Anyway,
Brandon has the challenge that most of Stormlight Archive, the world building was done over 10 years ago at this point. So like it's hard to like
20.
You can't just decide like, hey, it's Stormlight 5. I'm gonna like shoehorn in this whole like other aspect of the world that you've never seen before. Like it's a challenge for him to do that, I guess, with an ongoing series. So
there's a lot of Western nations where you could insert a lot of that because we don't really know a lot about them. But
anyway,
on our chart at least,
just some more stuff.
Yeah.
So this next question is finally from me.
Hey,
I get to read my own question.
Finally aligned.
Yep.
Yeah. So, why are Seons stuck as floating balls of light in the cognitive realm, while true Spren get to be people-shaped? I feel that is unfair. Brennan, that is a little unfair, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, it just like still has a lot of unfair things going on. Can't really leave cell. Have to get through the deadly plasma.
As long as you can get through the plasma, you're not like locked to cell.
And then at the end, he goes, I'll be honest, I couldn't decide if I should use a Seon there at the end or a Tamukic. In one draft, it was a Tamukic, and then I thought, Seons are more interesting because they have volition. Tamukic is just a bone. It was a Tamukic originally, and then it was a Seon, then back to a Tamukic, and then I released it as a Seon.
It's you're. I think you're about 100% of our Tamukic Lopsian, and you totally
I think so.
And you just where Brandon is like, oh, they're like Tamukics. It's like, oh yeah, Tamukics.
And it's like both like not intentionally anywhere close to Tamukics. He just decides like, I'll give you some Tamukic information.
Tamukic lore. Ian, Tamukic expert. Apparently they're bones and they allow you to do communication. That's about all we know.
Yeah. When we were in like recording the interview, I was like, "Oh boy, this is a thing that I should know, isn't it?
No.
This is a thing I should have heard of." And I just like am trying to blank face my way through it and pretend that I know what Brandon's talking about. No, it's Dragonsteel. It's a Dragonsteel thing. Nobody knows what it is.
I kind of know.
You are a special person who has read Dragonsteel.
Yeah. Well,
and then he taunts us with Dragonsteel.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. He literally held it up. Yeah.
Like waves it in front of everybody.
Oh, wouldn't you like to read this? Brandon's such a troll. Well, like a very good-natured troll. Like, I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and speaking of Dragonsteel, and then Brandon then says that, Dragonsteel Prime will come out with the Words of Radiance Kickstarter, and there's not a lot that's canon. Like, Shodel, Dragons, and Tamukic are in there, but the Hoid stuff is not canon. So, yeah. We'll get to see it eventually.
A bit about who's been working on the Aethers recently and plans on like incorporating them into books soon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He made a major breakthrough with Aethers and how he wanted it all to connect. So that's always interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Brandon messed me up because I think he says Aethers, but Final Fantasy uses this word too, and they say ether.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I always want to say Aether because it starts with an A.
Yeah.
Well, it's like ether is also a word.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Like just with the E.
Yeah. So it's like they're different.
But
it's essentially the fifth element, isn't it? Like the fabric of.
Yeah, but I think that there are pronunciations where it is ether, even though it's spelled with an A.
Yeah,
So
I think it's when like the A and E are connected.
Yeah.
I imagine in like
because that is pronounced like E.
Yeah,
Pronunciation cast again.
Yeah, great. Cool. So that is all the stuff from our interview. I think we're just gonna go real quick into some random bobbity bits. Real quick.
Bibbidi bops. So we have a thing from a live stream where somebody asked about which Order of Knights Radiant was hardest for Brandon to conceptualize. Brandon says Dustbringers. And even they are not like fully formed in his head yet. And the primary reason for that is because he wants Dustbringers to be more than just like a generic fire magic with like fire beams and explosions and fireballs and things like that. But also their power set is very much that, right? And so it's a difficult thing for him to do.
Yeah.
So we'll see where they end up.
Cool.
It's really interesting that Brandon, when people talk about like which Order of the Knights Radiant being hardest to conceptualize, Brandon talks about the power set. Whereas I would think of like conceptualizing the Knights Radiant being around like their oaths and like what kind of a person is a member of that, which
I think that's easy though.
Interesting. I don't know.
I think
I mean,
that's
we haven't seen much of what Dustbringers are like that way.
How are you going to use tension in combat? I'm just putting that out there. I still don't understand how that is a useful set of abilities. It's like, I made cloth tense. Wow, thrilling. I mean, we'll need to find out, I guess. But
yeah. No, because like in terms of characteristics, we have all of the divine attributes, and so it's just a matter of taking the two that you've put in that box and saying, okay, what kind of person is a person that embodies these two attributes? And yes, some of them are easier than others, like leading and protecting that's a very strong archetype in the minds of people. Whereas brave and obedient, I mean, that's kind of a soldiery type, right? Chain of command, following orders, stuff like that. We have a couple of like compassionate and scholarly orders. So,
but like getting a good magic that is, compelling to read, right?
Yeah.
Like that can be really difficult to do. And Brandon really likes having cool magical combat be actually cool. So he really likes that a lot.
You're kind of the magic guy.
Well, especially magical combat. He really likes that.
I think we've seen, like, I feel like the Skybreakers almost feel like they're missing one of their powers because you can sort of tell that Brandon doesn't necessarily
know how
want
division works. I mean, we gotta get it in book 5. We gotta get it in book 5.
I think he knows, and I think he knows that it's really powerful, and so he's staying away.
So
can't give it to them too early because it's OP. Also, I don't have all the details set up, so let's just gloss over this for now.
Nail just raffles all of them.
That's basically what it did. Yeah.
In this next swap, Brandon was talking about the Skyward series and how Spencer in book 2 was kind of off on her own, and she's going to be off on her own in book 3, and he wanted to get the characters in from book 1. So at the time book 3 comes out, there's going to be, they hope to have 3 novellas from 3 different viewpoints that are going to cover the same time as the 3rd book does, to kind of catch you up on what everybody is doing while Spencer is doing her own solo adventure.
Cool. Yep. And that is being worked on. This one was from January, so I imagine progress has still made.
I actually did.
Well, that's the next one
about Skyward, so that's fascinating. So, I do want to see more of the OG Skyward.
Yep.
We'll probably get Jorgen.
Yeah,
I love Jorgen.
Yeah, I imagine Jorgen has to be one of them, right?
Yeah.
Like Jorgen, Kimmelin, and I don't know who else.
Yeah, Kimmelin is also the one I was thinking. Ironsides? No, not the Ironsides.
Maybe Rig.
Could be one.
Cobb is the one I was thinking. Rig also would be an interesting idea.
Because nothing speaks to YA fans better than getting viewpoints from old grizzled Cobb.
really
relatable. Hashtag relatable.
Yep.
We'll get a POV from Morning Tide.
She's dead
from the beyond,
from the Skyward beyond.
Yeah. We find out about the afterlife in the Skyward universe.
Yeah.
Oh boy, cognitive shadows come to Skyward.
Yeah, sure.
People who die.
We get one
Delvers.
Delver novella.
We get the whole like novella about Ned and Arturo's like secret relationship off on the side.
Oh yeah, we could have like Arturo or something. Like the Ned Arturo one. Yeah, that's probably third one.
God, that's such a Grace thing to say.
No, but like that's solid because it's like I don't know if FM has a bunch. Like FM could be in Kimmelin's POV, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. We have no idea.
So the next one is another book update on Wax and Wane 4. This is early April. Brandon's talking about wrapping up the outline, and then he'll be writing that. So by the time this episode is out, he should be a good ways into the first draft of that book. The interesting thing here, though, is the length. So he's talking about how he's a little bit concerned that he's going to be long-winded with this book, as he does. With the issue being the time crunch of needing to get in Skyward 4 before he can move on to Stormlight 5. So he's saying that he's planning this book, it looks like, to start off as 120,000 words, but he's expecting it will likely get up to 150,000.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll be interesting to see I feel like almost he should probably like not have said that out loud, because that probably means it's going to be like 175,000 now.
Yeah,
it's been a while since Mistborn. I'm fine with a long book.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to do in Wax and Wane 4, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it is important that like he needs to be able to finish Skyward 4 this year.
Yeah. He
otherwise Stormlight 5 gets delayed, and I would much rather lose like 50 pages of Wax and Wane than have Stormlight be delayed like half a year.
Well, and also the Era 2 books are more thrillery, so like it a shorter length is advantageous for that style of book. Like you don't want that to like outstay its welcome. Like you just don't.
I just looked it up out of curiosity. Bands of Mourning was 130,000, I think, is what I saw.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest one of Era 2.
Yep.
And I think in this same live stream, I don't know if it was transcribed. This is that April 7th one. Brandon apparently said that he was sharing the outline amongst Dragonsteel, and it seems like thumbs up. People are excited, so that makes me very excited.
Interesting.
All right, so this next one, also from this April stream, just talking about the lengths of Mistborn Era 3 books, and that will be more like Era 1 lengths. Obviously, the 1980s trilogy was one that was originally in the plan, and Era 2 is the deviation. And Brandon is hoping to write all 3 Era 3 books before the first one comes out, because he really liked the advantage with continuity there. So there might be a break in some Cosmere releases, but he says that there'll be some other stuff like a non-Cosmere novella collection. You might get Apocalypse Guard together, maybe Dark One. Even talks about White Sand, that he might put that through his revision process, and that might come out and have it match the graphic novel canonicity. But yeah, he's targeting and then he also says writing Elantris 2 and 3 then as well. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff, and he's finishing 3 series in a row: Skyward, Wax and Wane, and first half of Stormlight. So
yeah,
good luck.
He has high aspirations for that gap between Stormlight 5 and 6.
Yeah, I mean, he is very productive, and Stormlight books are like 400,000 words as opposed to 100,000. So like, or 200,000 for like Era 1 length books. But yeah.
Got some good stuff coming down.
And the Lost Metal outline, that's its tentative title, The Lost Metal. People like it in the company.
And he did do Era 1 kind of back to back, right?
Yeah.
That's what he's referring to when he says he wants to do Era 3 the same way.
He got to like adjust some things about like hemalurgy now that he wrote Hero of Ages and some minor things. So like there were some advantages. I think that will be stronger. So it makes a more cohesive trilogy, and I think that's pretty important for good trilogies, honestly.
Yeah, I'm actually glad he's doing that, because I thought he wasn't going to be able to do it.
Yeah,
because like he was able to do it for Era 1 because he was a new author. It's like they were waiting like several years after he finishing a book before releasing it. So like he just had the time. He finished the 3rd one before like the first one came out, just because that's how it worked.
Yeah.
But now like actually like delaying and doing it all together.
Yep.
Yeah, because writing 3, let's say 200,000 word books is gonna take, I would say it's probably gonna take about the same time as it takes to write 1 Stormlight book, because it is 3 books and it is more pages, but also it's kind of the same. Let's say a little longer. Let's say it's gonna take him 2 years instead of 1.5 years to write 3. It's gonna be weird for like Brandon to just sit there and like just write things for 2 years.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. That's Stormlight 5.
It'll probably be like 1 a year after that, though. So
that will be crazy.
They do not do the release thing that they did with Shadows and Bands.
Oh my god, they better not. It better actually be 1 a year. Like
way close together.
Oh, that is too close.
Even
After Stormlight 5,
1 a year though.
That's where we start talking about Cremcast. that's when we're real dry, waiting for the next Cosmere stuff.
We'll go once a month for a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. Cool.
All right. Our next question, also talking about upcoming potential projects. This question is from CK. Will you delve more into the Threnody system? Brandon says, I do intend to do more in the Threnody system if I can get to it. There is a novel I want to write set on Threnody. I have, I would say, 30% of an outline right now for that book. Whether I will have time for it or not is, like most other side projects, up in the air. But I do think something will happen there eventually. Isaac has a book that he's outlined that he would like to set on Threnody, because Isaac's going to take a stab at writing some Cosmere fiction. If you don't know, Isaac is my art director, basically my first collaborator in the Cosmere way back on Mistborn. He was one of my very first beta readers and did all the maps and things, and now he works for me full time.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
That's
That would
new.
be really cool. Yeah.
Also, an excellent human being.
Yes,
Yeah,
he's lovely. I imagine that's a Naz novel.
That'd be fun.
I think that's very likely.
I think that's super likely. Yeah. Agreed.
It is interesting that it sounds like Isaac's outline doesn't necessitate it taking place on Threnody, but it might take place there, right?
It's probably
Which
more
is
low
fine.
magic.
Like it because Naz is a world hopper. Like we can have
True,
Naz
true.
anywhere, right? But it's also
Mhm.
kind of nicer if it takes place on his home world.
More Threnody. Yes, please.
Well, and like Isaac being behind the scenes probably has access to all the cool world building Threnody secrets that would make it easier to come up with ideas.
I imagine he would.
To put a story together in that world.
He can just
like,
ask Brandon, "What's up with this?"
It will be very interesting to see this first collaboration that Brandon does with someone else in the Cosmere.
It'd be really fascinating.
I mean, he's already wrote like the Nikki Savage story, so like,
Mhm.
cool.
Okay.
Do we need this, Ian?
Next. I would say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to read the Moash one, so I want
Okay,
to read
that's
this
fine.
one.
Okay.
So we're
I got
now
the Moash one. Great.
gonna get into some Reddit words, Brandon. This one is from Luz Theron Telescope. You've said before that while the 10 surges arose due to perception of what things are fundamental forces, there were seeds that influenced what people perceived as fundamental. Is knowledge of the Rosharan shards and Dawn shards the seed referenced here? Brandon, the shards, yes. I wouldn't say the Dawn shards were involved directly, but the shards were influenced by the Dawn shards. So it gets muddy.
It sure does. What does that even mean?
The interaction between shards and Dawn shards is very interesting.
It is very interesting.
The sorting method of Dawn shards for the Shardic intents.
Yeah. So there's some. It's almost like a pyramid structure going on, right? So we have Adenalzium, and then we have the Dawn shards, and then the Dawn shards affect the shards, and then the shards affect the
Everything else.
magics or like reality itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that dictates what is considered fundamental, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, look, a Moash question.
Yep.
I wonder who's going to read that.
You are.
Oh, wait, it's me.
You got to read the Shallan bisexuality one and the Moash one. This Moash one. There you go.
The straightest guy on the... Anyway. Also, I don't like Moash, by the way.
Yeah.
So is Moash intended to read as being interested in men? Beyond some of the things he says, I relate a lot to his feelings of alienation, even within his marginalized group as a queer POC. Brent says, I wasn't intentionally coding Moash as queer, but that doesn't mean I didn't do it on accident, which, by the way, is exactly what happened with Shallan being bi in The Way of Kings. Brandon continues, I see him as straight personally, but having gone so far down a dark path, he basically feels nothing anymore.
Makes sense.
It does.
Yep. I think we talked a little bit about the Kalmoash ship in the podcast that we recorded, which I don't think we've decided if that one's before or
I don't
after
know.
this
Well,
one.
if it's not this one, if you haven't already seen the Moash episode, it's coming out next.
Either go listen to it or look forward to it to finish.
Yeah.
But I follow a lot of people who are into Kalmoash. It definitely has some very interesting dynamics concerning, their history and stuff like that. And a lot of the things that Moash says about Kaladin are very you can read romance in there.
Yeah.
If you want. So I think this is a really interesting question. But
hasn't this ship gathered a lot of steam since Rhythm of War?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because it feels and it's really ironic because I feel like every time I see commentary on that ship, it is kind of in the context of their personalities from before Rhythm of War. But it's only gotten popular after Rhythm of War has come out.
I think
or
there's
not
a lot
only,
of
but
the way that, because we get to see a lot more into Moash's head in Rhythm of War, which he's in a very twisted and dark place.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that has kind of being able to see that up close in Rhythm of War has kind of colored the way that we can read the rest of the story in terms of I really wish we did have more of their like friendship in the Words of Radiance era.
Yeah.
Like we hear that it existed, but we don't see a lot of it
Yeah.
until the assassination plot starts happening.
Mm.
Their friendship
yeah.
is very telly and not very showy. Which,
Unfortunately.
considering how
The
much
plot
like
happens. Yeah.
yeah,
Like how
considering
important.
how much hinges on that friendship in Rhythm of War,
Mm.
that could have been done better.
Yeah.
Which
There's a whole really interesting meta about how, you know, Moash is during Rhythm of War like subject to Odium's power and obeying his every order and things like that. And Odium wants Kaladin to be that as well. Moash thinks it would be a mercy to kill Kaladin. It's like, okay, Moash wants to save Kaladin from the fate that Moash is currently in. He thinks death would be nicer than his current situation, and like, oh, it's very twisted. And Moash is an interesting character in Rhythm of War.
and it's like going back full circle to earlier in the podcast where we were talking about like alternate paths the Stormlight Archive could have taken, is that Brandon moved up Moash's betrayal to book 2 because it originally supposed to happen in book 3. So like we would have seen more of their friendship.
Interesting.
I feel like it's this sort of thing that writing an entire trilogy straight through can really help, because it's like, okay, now I know specifically where I want it to end, and Brandon can revise the beginning of the first one, because he often says, like, hey, you know, if promises aren't paying off, you probably just didn't make the right promises and things, so you might just need to change the groundwork. Like, I do think he, you know, if he could write those 3 books, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, and Rhythm of War, he probably would have put in a Moash scene or 2 with Kaladin. That was more friendly, right? Like, that wouldn't be that bad to do.
Easier
It's
to
one of those
rebalance
things-
things when you have all of it.
Yeah, like sharing with like a writing group or having a team of beta readers is great for intra-book stuff, but they can't see the future, and so there's no way for them to be able to say like,
We
hey,
should really
if
need
we're
more
gonna
Moash here.
if we're gonna have this be the crux of like Kaladin's strife and viewpoint in book 4, we
Yeah.
should probably have some more friendship here in book 2 that I am working on right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, but also
we can't
like
see that.
even Brandon doesn't necessarily know that this is going to be, you know, the crux of Kaladin's story in book 4, because he discovery writes his characters, right? So I don't know if there's a way to win this.
Write all the books before they come out, but that is not exactly a sustainable option, because Stormlight books are freaking huge.
Just talking it up.
Yep.
But like there are authors that do that. Michael J. Sullivan, who like he self-publishes a lot on Kickstarter now, but like he'll write an entire series before he releases the first one.
Yeah.
The year is 2050, and Brandon drops the entire Cosmere on us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's perfect and
Can
has
you
exactly the
imagine?
scenes, but it's this is better, obviously.
Discovery writing has advantages, but every so often you need to switch things up, and you miss out on opportunities because it's already published.
Yep.
Where you needed it to be.
Yep.
Just go back and revise the ending of the book. No problem.
At least that was like a sentence or 2.
No series will ever be perfect.
Nope, it won't.
Anyway.
Cool.
So this next one was asked, Mojo Nero asked, in Era 1 there was an imbalance between ruin and preservation because humans had a bit more preservation than ruin in them. After harmony became a thing, and did this imbalance become irrelevant because both powers turned into one? Or is it something Sazed had or has to deal with? And Brandon raffos it for now, but says it should come up in Era 3.
Oh, that's so exciting. I'm glad this will matter, because it should matter.
I think this is the first time we hear that it will matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there was a word, Brandon, about like Sazed did something with the extra ruin, but he refused to say what that was.
I mean, I just don't think we're going to see that in Era 2, because, you know, Era 3 is the one that he probably has the broad strokes of like the major events that he wants to have happen.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is related to something there.
Although he has pulled some of them into Era 2 or the current Era 2.
Yeah. I mean, if Lost Metal is ATM stuff, that does have to do with bits of ruin.
I mean,
Possible.
oh man, I reread Shadows of Self and Alloy and starting bands, and man, I'm excited for Lost Metal. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I'm excited for that to reread those.
Yeah.
The next question here is by Evil Smiley, who asks, was Elantris built before the shards were splintered on Cell or not? And Brandon says, yes. In my outline right now, Elantris existed before Odium did his dirty work on Elantris. It's unlikely to change, but I do have to point out that this isn't strictly canon yet and likely won't be until I write the Elantris sequels.
This got a lot of discussion on Discord of people like, what? But like the Cellish are, like that's my reaction. Like, I mean, the Cellish essay does say that like the shards took an active role, but it is a little inconsistent because there is that line where it's like, at first they were unconcerned, but like it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
There's also the whole thing from the annotation. No, not from the annotations, from the jewelry description.
Oh
pages.
yes, only the most canon sources of in-world descriptions of jewelry.
About the early and middle and late.
Brandon doesn't know what that means.
Era.
He has no idea what that means on Cell. Like
every time I bring up annotations, I want to do an episode on annotations.
Yeah. But does that contradict this?
No, it doesn't.
No.
It's consistent with this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think Brandon like spitballed once about what the early, middle, and late eras of Cell were, and I think we talked about it on the show that probably isn't how it works. But
no, it's like it flagrantly contradicts. Like
Again, Brandon, didn't he finish Elantris in like 2002? Is that right? Like long time ago. Do you think he knows his Cellish timeline stuff? Absolutely 0%. It's like, I'm spitballing here. That's what makes sense. But yeah, I mean, this makes total sense to me. Like in that description of the jewelry of that first king, right? The city was abandoned. It was already there. So I think it had to have been built by a shard at some point. So I don't know, but a lot of people on Discord are like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like, I think it's perfectly fine.
Blobs aren't canon, and I like that Brandon very specifically says this one is like, it's not canon yet. Like,
I mean, there's enough wiggle room in the Cellish essay for this to totally make sense. Like, I don't see any issue with this. All right, last one. So this one's by Oversleep. This is apparently from a long Reddit thread, but I just wanted to include it because Oversleep was saying two characters who I believe absolutely butchered in terms of what their setup was and what happened to them. Talking about Amaram, with talking, just like working with Odium at the end of Oathbringer, and Race, where, setting, up Race, and then, Race just dies. And Brandon says, while I kind of agree on Amaram, I don't on Race, but it's useful for me to read this sort of thing. The goal with Amaram was to finally let him be the monster on the outside. He was on the inside. And so the sequence felt thematically right to me in outlining and writing. Since publication, though, I've walked back this opinion somewhat. While the sequence works as intended, it's not quite right. And if I were doing the book over, I'd try something different.
Actually giving it a sequence.
I mean,
hot take.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I think the sequence, I think Kaladin's battle with Amaram there at the end works and it's fine, but we don't have the lead up to it.
It would be nice to just have a little bit more foundation to that,
Yeah, because I believe I've talked about this on the show before
multiple times.
Yeah, whereas Amaram was an anti-villain, and then he becomes a villain, and there's no transition point,
an interlude, just like an interlude, right?
That's what I was thinking as well.
That so easily could have been done. Although I don't agree with Race being given what we talked about with Race earlier. I think Brandon's explanation makes a lot of sense. I don't think he would be an intimidating threat in book 5. Taravangian's way more intimidating, I think.
Yeah, I do agree that I think the Amaram sequence is the weakest part of the end of Oathbringer.
Yeah.
Especially because I feel like it really kind of cheapens Kaladin's ability to sort of like strike back against someone who really hurt him and who was an oppressor and did that. And it's like, well, now you're allowed to do that because he's a big crystal monster.
He's a crystal monster!
As opposed to like Kaladin getting to confront the Light Eyes person who did this from like a position of privilege. And then we also have just, So I do think it felt a little weird and kind of an unsatisfying end for Amaram, who a lot of his evil was that he thought he was good and that he dressed himself up in this like the very respectable outward appearance. And I do think losing that, we lost some of what made Amaram originally a good antagonist. Rather than transitioning, we lost something, I think.
That final clash with Amaram and Kaladin was just not as cool as it maybe should have been.
Mm-hmm. Kaladin has some great lines in it, but the Amaram parts were pretty forgettable.
Yeah. I'm going to disagree just a little bit and say that I think the fact that Amaram turned into a giant crystal monster is not necessarily an issue, because his personality was still his personality. It's just that he didn't say the things that I think some of us wanted him to say. Like, it was much more stereotypically villainy.
Yeah.
Than their interaction from the Way of Kings was kind of setting up to do. Like there was missing complexity there. But Amaram was not like completely taken over by Yelignar or anything of that nature. Yelignar was a source of power, not an overwhelming presence for him.
Yeah. Anyway, I just find that interesting. I feel like the books are probably slightly less good because Brandon is pumping them out on a really tight schedule for Stormlight. Like, other authors would wait 5 years before publishing that, and would the book be better? Yeah, it probably would if he had more time to just like really deeply think about things for a long time. But Brandon's like, I'm gonna publish the best books I can, and that's what I'm gonna do. And I have a schedule, and I'm gonna meet the schedule.
Yeah.
So
the schedule is really a factor.
And we just have to accept that the books will not be totally perfect, and there will be some flaws, but we can still love them anyway.
I don't know what you're talking about. Rhythm of War was perfect.
Cool. All right, we're finally done. Oh my god. All right, so let's quickly. We'll just do one. Who's that Cosmere character?
This character is from Roshar.
Menace. Tien.
Tom.
Raise.
Void in drag on a horse.
It's time for Who's That Cosmere Character? Caw. All right, Grace for once is not doing the intro because she didn't want to today. And so you send in 5 clues and a character to wtcc at 17shard.com, and we will read them each aloud, and these guys have to guess who's that Cosmere character. I think this one is sent in by Hut on a Hill and Dracon7550. So, clue 1. This character is not married.
Yasna.
Not Yasna.
Mercy.
Not Mercy. Marasi.
Feels like that should be really relevant.
It's not Kaladin.
Duke Royal.
It's not Royal. I like it.
Wow.
I like that.
Renarin, sure.
It's not Renarin. All right. Clue 2. This character was a slave.
Moash.
It's not Moash.
Wait, was Moash actually a slave? I don't know if he was.
I don't think
it's complicated.
I mean,
I don't think he had a slave brand.
No, he wasn't, because he got it on his shoulder.
Yeah. Oh well.
Sa.
It's not Sa.
Relaine.
It's not Relaine.
Trying to think of other slaves in the Cosmere.
No,
Yeah.
oh god, who's this character? I wish I hadn't had like half a bottle of whiskey right now.
I mean,
Wow.
technically all of the Ska are slaves,
Yeah,
right?
so I'm going to say Doxin.
It's not Doxin.
Menace.
It's not Menace. I like it. Did you guess, Evgeni?
I guessed, and I have the next guess ready.
Okay. Clue 3. Many people look up to this character.
I no longer have the next guess ready. What?
Mm.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear this clue and guess Ken.
Who?
Ken.
Oh, no, it's not Ken.
I thought it was gonna
Kaladin
be.
has been guessed, right?
Kaladin has been guessed, yes.
Yes.
I feel like it's. Was there like a ska member of the assembly who was? I can't remember
Marsh?
their names.
It's not Marsh.
Rock? No, Rock's married. No, I take it back.
Rock's super married.
I thought because he's tall, it could be a pun. Lots of people look up to him.
I know it's gonna. I know it's gonna shock you. It's not Rock.
No, I took it back. It doesn't count. No, that's
Not
fine.
Rock.
I don't have a better guess. It's fine.
Rip.
Let's just go with it.
Jeez.
Zeth, because he's always flying.
It's not Zeth.
Sigil.
It's not Sigil. All right. Evgeni, did you guess?
I guessed Ken.
Oh, right. Clue 4. This character is known for wearing an earring.
Vin.
It's not Vin.
Dang it. He's married.
He was married.
How many? Yeah, I was.
He's
Yeah,
never really
also-
a slave either.
yeah.
That was a
I mean-
guess.
I will say though, like earring immediately triggered Vin
Yeah.
in my head.
Yeah,
That's
Vin's
cool.
earring. Vin's earring.
I felt like I had to get it out before someone else did.
That's true.
He is known for wearing an earring.
He's known for wearing an earring.
Is it Sazed?
It is Sazed.
Hey!
Hey.
Sure.
I'm a little sketch on whether the character is technically a slave or not, but I mean, kind of. Yeah.
The Terrors are
They're
slaves.
property.
It's a slave
Yeah,
cast.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
I
that
think-
works.
I think
that
it flies.
All right. And clue 5 was this character is not a member of a religion.
Does
Whoa,
being a deity
whoa,
make you
whoa.
a member of a
Hold
religion? I feel like you get a membership
I
card
mean,
when you
does
found
Harmony
a
worship
religion.
himself? I don't think so. Like, let's be
I think
honest.
Lightsong would take issue with that logic, Feather.
No. I think he's absolutely a member of a, like, he's the target, the subject of a religion. I think that makes him a part
Yeah.
of it.
You know?
I'm glad we didn't get to this clue, so I don't get to nitpick.
But also, I
He's
like
not
how
an adherent.
people look up to him.
Yeah.
He's God.
Uh,
Also, he's tall.
Also, he's
He's
tall.
tall. He's tall. Yeah.
So Feather was right in guessing a tall person.
I thought it might be a double meaning.
Yeah. Nice.
Sneaky.
Okay, well, Ben's gonna have so much fun editing this heap of an episode.
He has the whole week off.
Yeah. Good luck with that, Ben. You can find us on 17shard.com for all your news, discussion, theories, and fun that you could ever want. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We do streams on YouTube sometimes. You can support us on Patreon if you
To
want.
vote in art poll.
Yep. And it's only $1 to join our Patreon if you wish to join. So it costs you almost nothing. But only do it if you can, of course. Don't give us money that you can't afford. But yeah, you can leave us a review on iTunes. And we'll see you next time for maybe Moash or maybe Moash already occurred. I don't know. Whatever.
We'll see.
Time is weird.
Time is weird.
To force
weird,
the
time's fake.
future is not of honor.
Yeah. But that void binding chart's in the future. That
Ugh.
much I know.
Maybe.
No,
Maybe.
I have no idea.
We don't know
killing
anything.
All right. Bye.
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 Call.